Jackie Nugara is a counsellor and psychotherapist working in private practice, specialising in trauma and abuse. Jackie has a varied work background. In addition to 12 years in the corporate world, predominantly in marketing, she's owned and operated businesses in the retail and entertainment industries. Over the past 12 years, Jackie has run a successful practice in Australia, originally starting as a life coach and business coach. She then followed her own personal journey with her interest developing more towards counselling and psychotherapy. She diversified her skills and she chose to pursue a career in the mental health profession. As well as conducting one-on-one and couples therapy, Jackie also runs very successful workshops and seminars. Welcome to Success Tribe, Jackie.
Thanks, Kelly.
Jackie, look, I'm just wondering if you wouldn't mind expanding a little bit more on your coaching background relative to what led you to move into trauma therapy.
Sure. From 1995 to 2000, I had my own retail business. It was a pet shop in a sort of eastern suburbs of Sydney, and I had a lot of difficulty with that business. I had a lot of staff issues, a lot of financial pressure. The business itself was a great learning experience, but it certainly wasn't financially successful, and that led me to take on my own sort of life and business coach. And I worked with him for about 12 months, and that helped, and it was an enormous support while going through a lot of difficulty trying to run that business. At the end of the 12 months, he said to me, you would make a great coach. So I did the training with his personal development company and basically used to subcontract for his company, and for about 12 months, people would sign up to do their weekend seminars, and then I would do 6 or 12 months worth of coaching with them to kind of consolidate the work that they had done in the personal development seminars. That was going really well, and my practice was really taking off. And then my partner and I moved to London for a few years. Yep. And when I came back from living in London, then I really wanted to get back into coaching and set up my private practice again. The thing that I found, though, with coaching is I do believe in coaching, and I do believe in helping people set goals and moving forward. But what I tended to find with clients is that people were very stuck, found it really difficult to move forward and to achieve their goals, and basically had a lot of negative beliefs about themselves, pretty much from their conditioning in childhood, and it made it really hard for them to achieve those goals. And I'd had similar experiences myself. So having done a lot of my own therapy, I decided to study and become a counsellor and psychotherapist. And I think these days I'm more the kind of nature of my work is about really helping people be where they're at.
Do you think that quite often many of us, or most of us, we try and avoid where we're at?
Yes, I do. And I think one of the sort of gurus in Gestalt therapy once said, when you come to therapy, you can hold this much in terms of emotion, so a very small amount. And as you engage with therapeutic process, you learn to be able to hold more and more. So you can hold more of your own feelings and emotions and thoughts. And that allows you to go out and engage with your world in a different way. And I would say I've certainly found that very true for myself.
Why do you think that most of us avoid the feelings?
I think it's a great coping strategy, and I think it's what most of us learn to avoid. We think we're not capable of being with some of the hard stuff, and avoidance is a very natural coping strategy, and for many people it's a good coping strategy, and it will help people to be able to survive to a certain point. I do believe, however, in order to move forward, sometimes the coping strategies we've developed as children no longer serve us as adults. So it will get you to a certain point, and then whatever you're avoiding is going to show up around money or your career or relationships, health. It's going to show up somewhere. So, and that is often what pushes people to come and see a counsellor is when, or even a coach, is when a certain area of their life or many areas of their life just aren't working anymore.
So if you're trying to avoid emotions and it's building up over 20, 30 or however many years, then it manifests as, within your relationships or other areas of your life. If you go to a coach, how can that help comparative to going to counselling? Or how do you know what you need? Will a coach tell somebody that they can't work with them until they've actually worked on those areas and gone deeper into them through somebody like yourself, a trauma therapist?
Yeah, a good coach will. If the coach isn't fearful themselves, they would encourage a client to actually seek counselling and work with them together if a client can afford to do that. Sometimes finances limit people's ability to do that. But if you're a really good coach, you're not going to try to push people through. And I would suggest a lot of coaches get counselling training because then they can work with people in both ways.
Just wondering, Jackie, I've seen a lot of people at success seminars and they tend to come off on quite a high. I won't mention which seminars, but some of those bigger ones out there that we all love to go to. And they come off on a high. They've got all this newly acquired knowledge and they're ready to go out and grab the world. But at the end of the day, I've contacted these people and I've asked, well, have you moved forward on, what you mentioned that you're going to move forward on while we're at the seminar? And the answer is more often than not, well, no.
Yeah.
Why does this happen, do you think?
Well, I think in times with a lot of seminars, they simplify things too much and it's all well and good to be positive and, have this... a lot of the time on seminars, I think the goals that people set on those kind of personal development seminars are too high. Then they get back into the reality of the world. And often the ones that I've been to say, well, don't hang around negative people and don't do this and don't do that. But we have to live in a world where reality is part of it. And the world that we're living in is very different to what's set up in those seminars. And I think it creates a lot of false expectation. And I was very guilty when I first started this journey, particularly getting into coaching. I went to a lot of personal development seminars and in the end I'd always come out going, well, how come that person can achieve those goals but I can't? And the answer was always the same. Well, there must be something wrong with me. And as I began to study trauma and what happens to the body and the brain in trauma, I started to realise there was nothing actually wrong with me. It was just that my body and brain were doing their own thing as a result of a lot of the experiences I went through. And I think a lot of the self-help movement provide very short-term solutions, and it can help. There is a place for it, and it can help get people through very rough patches in their life. So I'm not anti the personal development movement. I think sometimes you can pick up a book or go to a seminar and you'll get something from that book or that seminar at that particular time in your life that you need. You may meet some like-minded people that help get you through, and that's a really good thing. But sometimes I think it also can set people up to expect too much from life. And the reality of life is very different, and I don't know that they necessarily promote long-term change.
So do you think in a way that they're setting many people up for failure because of these high, grand goals?
Sometimes, but as I said, there are good things that come out of it. People will often be drawn to something at a particular time in their life, and they will get something beneficial. It's just for some people, and it would only be probably a small portion of the population that attend them, it can leave them feeling worse about themselves. I know for me in particular, I ended up with a lot of times depression after attending seminars because I just come away feeling like such a failure.
I can imagine definitely someone that's been through a lot of trauma, they would have those feelings. But and also I'd imagine for someone that's been through a lot of addiction and abuse on that level,
Yeah.
Because they find it very difficult to take such large steps, and just to take a small step is a big thing in itself. So I think that it may not be for such a small population. I'm not sure what your ideal of a small population is, whether it's 5% or 10%.
Yeah, I'm sort of thinking maybe, between 10 and 15%.
10 and 15, because as I mentioned before, the people that I had contacted were very normal people. I don't know if they'd had a lot of trauma, but as I said, just normal people who hadn't put anything in place. They didn't have the structure there.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting.
Well, another point, as you say that, is I think in order for us to make change, we need to have ongoing support. And I don't think a lot of those seminars or books provide that. It's like, here's the how to go off and help yourself. Here's how to go away and fix yourself. But there's no ongoing support. So I think that's the difference between working with a coach and a counsellor. It's really having someone in your corner to help you through that. And I don't know, I think sometimes in the coaching industry there's a lot of words like accountability, and I don't think people, I think that can often feed into people already who have very self-critical talk about being lazy or procrastinators, then having more internal pressure to be accountable, when what they're really needing is sometimes take the foot off the pedal, to be more gentle to themselves, to be more compassionate to themselves, and to be more loving towards themselves. Because a lot of the people I work with are very, very hard on themselves, try to push themselves quite a lot, and I certainly used to be like that too. And I don't know how much you can really achieve with a lot of shoulds and a lot of have-tos and a lot of self-critical talk. So I think if you can find a very compassionate, loving person to work with that will support you through over a consistent period of time, I think that can make a lot of changes.
I'd say that would be a lot of A-type personalities you're talking about there too, that are constantly pushing, and they're very high on or big on the goal setting and the achieving. And in actual fact, I guess what you're saying is that they may need to take the foot off the pedal sometimes to go forward.
Yeah, I'm not even. Yes, there are A-type personalities, but I think it's mainly highly functioning people. As a counsellor, I tend to attract clients that are similar to me, and they're fairly highly functioning as I am. But it's more so, even without the being A-type and highly driven, a lot of people have a feeling of not feeling good enough, and so that drives them to always want to have to do better, because they're coming from that place that who I am and what I do isn't good enough. And rather than kind of realising that they just may be suffering the impacts of unresolved stuff from childhood.
Yeah.
And
so they're holding all of that. Yeah, makes sense.
I mean, I really do believe people don't wake up in the morning and go, you know what, I choose to be fearful. I choose to not feel good about myself. I choose to not achieve the things that I want to achieve. Like, I think most people want the things that they want in life. And most people would like to have better lives and feel happier. So it's not because they're lazy or they're procrastinators, or it's because somehow that they are stuck.
Talking about the stuckness, how does trauma impede your success goals relative to that looping effect that you get when you've had a very traumatic event in your life? But some people say, just get over it. You should just get over it. Positive thoughts, NLP, all of these different therapies, and it doesn't always work.
I actually think a lot of the time that makes people feel worse about themselves, because they go, well, if somebody, and this used to happen to me a lot, if somebody thinks that I should just be able to let it go and I can't let it go, my brain would always go into, well, there must be something wrong with me. There must be something fundamentally wrong with me that I can't do that. And I attended Evolution of Psychotherapy conference in Anaheim, California in 2009. And at this conference, there was every sort of form of psychotherapy available, and a number of type of workshops and speakers. And I went to, I don't know, probably about 15 different workshops on trauma, and started to understand the neuroscience of trauma and what happens to the brain and the body in trauma. And when I went to that conference, a lot of those workshops, I would sit there and I go, oh my God, this is me. This is what happens to me.
Wow.
And it really started to make me understand that there's nothing abnormal about what I go through, that what I go through is really normal based on having been through a very traumatic childhood. And it gave me a lot of hope, because it showed me that, yes, this is what happens, and it also showed me that there are a number of treatments out there that can really help people to not be so stuck and not to suffer the impacts of trauma. And when I came back to Sydney, I sought out a therapist who specialised in trauma, was trained in EMDR, which is eye movement desensitising and reprocessing, which is a very effective trauma treatment. And it really changed my life. And I really wanted to be able to change the lives of my clients who, like me, were very stuck. Because trauma happens in the body first. And often our thinking brains don't come online, but we're in that fight, flight or freeze response before we even have time to think about it.
So you feel for us to overcome trauma, we need to go through processes such as EMDR. In your experience, that's been the most beneficial. Is that right?
For me, yes. It doesn't work for everybody, and some people won't respond well to EMDR. It's like any treatment; it's not a one size fits all. But I do believe that for us, in order to heal, we have to heal what's stored in our bodies and what's stored in our nervous system. So EMDR can be very effective. It is about helping people to desensitize traumatic memory, and so that the traumatic memory doesn't have such an impact on them. But as I said, it doesn't work for everybody. And I think it's important to work with a counsellor or a therapist who knows how to work with the body in trauma, because it happens in our bodies first.
Do you mean in how to actually hold it, or
how to get it out of our bodies?
How to release it out? Yeah,
how to release it out of our bodies, because I think it is possible to learn how to regulate our nervous systems.
Yeah.
If you think about trauma, is that we have dysregulated nervous systems that are taking us into fight, flight, or freeze. So it's really about learning how to regulate your nervous system.
Okay. Someone that's out there that has been through great trauma and just is not sure about what step they should take next to get help. You know, they've been covering this up for a very long time. What would you suggest to them, Jackie?
I would suggest, going into Google, finding a therapist who basically, has on their website that they know how to work with trauma. You can go to their EMDR website in Australia. And one of the things I really want to point out is you don't have to go through really extreme events to be suffering from trauma, okay? But trauma, I think, is a very misunderstood concept. Often if you've been bullied at school, you may have grown up with parents that neglected you over a long period of time.
Yeah.
Anything that causes emotional distress, as we're growing up, releases chemicals into our body like adrenaline and cortisol, and it also causes the brain to encode that as not a normal event. So you may have been somebody who was just put down continually throughout your childhood, either by parents or people at school or by teachers, and suffered a lot of emotional distress, and you get very triggered in the present by things that people say or things that people do. and it causes you to get flooded with emotion that is not tolerable. So that is trauma. It doesn't have to be a rape or domestic violence or, an armed hold up. It can be that, but it can also be prolonged emotional distress. And I think people misunderstand that.
And there'd be a lot of people out there that just have no idea that they're suffering from trauma or the result of trauma from their childhood. There are things that are coming up, but they don't know what is wrong with them. Why aren't I moving forward?
There's also developmental trauma too, which is very much about just not being given proper caregiving. And there's a theory out there called attachment theory about how we are given, how we are raised, how we are our caregivers look after us, how they teach us about how to attach to other human beings also really impacts our relationships. And many of us haven't had proper caregiving. We've had traumatized parents who don't know how to regulate their own systems, who then pass that on to their kids.
Wow.
I work with a lot of clients who've got anxiety because they grew up with very anxious parents, particularly mothers.
Yeah.
And a lot of conflict in the home. So when there's a high level of anxiety in the home, and that child's nervous system isn't regulated, then they grow up to be adults with anxiety.
And that's so prevalent now. I hear it and see it everywhere, whether it's with colleagues, friends, family members. It's everywhere, and it's just medicated so easily too. And what a shame when we can do so many other things to help release it. And I know from personal experience, because I've suffered from anxiety, I've dealt with it by eating correctly, going to the gym, working out, and meditating. So, there are other ways, and also by speaking to a therapist. And it's nothing to be ashamed of.
No, and things like yoga and meditation and dance and theatre, there are a lot of different things that get the body moving, and having somebody to facilitate getting that stuff out of your body. It doesn't have to be therapy, it doesn't have to be EMDR, it can be things that are very healthy for our mind, body and spirit. However, some people do use those strategies as avoidant. They become very focused on having a healthy body, having great health, but emotionally they're then avoiding their feelings. So it's really about a balance. But if you can work holistically with your mind, body, spirit, and you can use things like, yoga, movement, dance, etc. to heal trauma, it doesn't have to just be therapy. But I think it's about having a consciousness of what you're doing and not using it as an avoidance strategy.
And not self-medicating the feeling or the anxious feeling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good point. Very good point, Kelly.
Jackie, just to finish off, what does holistic life success mean to you?
I think it's really changed. I know when I first started my own journey, I really had this goal of one day being happy. And I think happiness is an illusion. I think we are happy. We're happy if we can be with life as it is. It's not this sort of utopia that I think a lot of us are striving for. I think the happier I've become is when I can just accept that life is a roller coaster. It's full of ups and downs. It's full of really good times, and it's full of pain. And the more I've learned to be with my pain and just accept that pain is a part of life, that sadness, grief, depression, anxiety is also a part of it. It's not to say that you have to accept being depressed or anxious. If you're suffering from depression and anxiety as a result of trauma, there is stuff that you can do to help yourself and to get help. But I do believe that we think life is just all about searching for the positive. And what I notice is that we live in a society of fixers. So as soon as someone shows up with pain, we want to fix it because we can't be with our own pain. Whereas what most people are just after is to be listened to and validated. Is someone, if you can really be present to somebody in their pain and just listen and be with that person, that's incredibly healing. So when I say about holistic living, I think it's being with life as it is, not how we imagine it should be. And the more we can hold in ourselves, I think it allows us to have deeper connections with other people, because when they show up with their stuff, we can be with them in it, and then that creates connection.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you there, Jackie. You can only, if you felt your own pain, you can feel what somebody else is going through. If you're not willing to go into your own, how are you going to be able to relate to other people? Well, you become like you become quite cold, actually, don't you?
Sure.
They're the people out there that I found that are cold, and I've been that person in the past. I've been very cold most of my 20s and teens. Very cut off because I wasn't willing to feel anything. I remember a friend of mine used to call me Little Miss I Feel Nothing.
Yeah, and you know, that would have been a really good coping strategy for you to get through what you want, what you had to get through in life at that time. But I think as we get older, we do value people more. Things become less important, you know, and it is about wanting greater connections as we get older. And I think, you know, basically that, as you know, Kelly, I'm a big advocate of doing, you know, embracing our own shadows, embracing our own darkness. I think we can't really understand our own light inside until we also hold our own darkness. And I think when other people's darkness shows up, then we can be with them in that. And also, the more we own our own darkness, we don't have to then act it out in the world or project it onto other people.
You don't become that loose cannon.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So you've embraced your humanness, and I think, you know, we're all emotional balls, aren't we? When you put us under one of those microscopes, those very powerful microscopes, we're just energy balls. So I think, you know, when we accept that energy is positive and negative, and, you know, I think it's Debbie Ford, isn't it, that says we're
Yes.
a micro, what did she say, Jackie? A microcosm, part of a macrocosm, and everything that is out there, every single emotion that is out there, anger, hate, lust, greed, happiness, joy, you know, the other end of the spectrum. It's all out there, and it is also all inside of us. And
it's part of our humanness. And I think, you know, sometimes we have to, as females, we have to be a bitch in order to be assertive or stand up for ourselves, or, you know, own our own power. There's a place for every kind of emotion. In our society too, anger is really frowned upon, but anger can be a very positive, energizing and clarifying emotion if we use it consciously. It's when we act it out and we're not conscious about our stuff, that's when it becomes dangerous.
Absolutely. Look, Jackie, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sure that it's been very enlightening and very supportive for a lot of people out there. And I'm just wondering, where can people get hold of you if they're looking to get further support in the future?
They can go to my website, www.supportmatters.com.au. My mobile is on there and my email. Even if you're in a different state or in a different country, you know, I'm really open to people contacting me, letting me know what they're struggling with, and maybe I can point them in the right direction to a good coach or a good therapist in their local area. I also do Skype sessions. Therapy is a little bit hard to do over Skype if we haven't had a face-to-face relationship, but I certainly have a good network of people that I can refer to. And so, yes, I'm more than happy to receive phone calls or emails if anyone needs any information. My website's a great resource in terms of explaining trauma, how trauma works, how you can get help. But more than happy to talk to people out there and help in any way that I can. I'm very passionate about making a difference to people who are in pain and in suffering, and, you know, helping them to lead more I won't say happy lives, but lives that fulfill them, and lives that give them kind of peace and a sense of purpose, and allow them to feel good about themselves.
Thank you so much, Jackie.
No, thank you, Kelly. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to your listeners and your magazine subscribers today.
Awesome. Thanks, Jackie.